All right, I'll get this underway. Um, this is my new YouTube channel. I have had several in the past. However, I'm going to do things a lot different on this channel. One thing I'm going to refrain from doing is using so much vulgar language. Um, Not only, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, and a lot of people don't, but the productivity of it and the um, use of it in an argument is not really. It doesn't have a lot of benefits. Um, anyway, to get going, um, basically this is my new channel. I do have another channel. However, like I said, that one is a little bit more blunt. I do have a couple videos that I um, rip a couple people, um, not necessarily for their beliefs per se, more for their behavior. Um, However, anyway, on this channel, I'll basically be giving a opinion or an informative stance on world politics or world events or current events, as well as doing some book reviews. Um, as far as suggesting books for me to read, at this point in time, I'm not really buying that many new books. Um, I have a lot of books in my collection that I haven't actually read yet, so hopefully I'll be able to get to them and I'll be able to give you an idea of what the book is about if it may interest you. I'm typically more into history and military history and warfare than anything, and I typically do not read fiction. However, I do have a few fiction books, and today I'll be getting into one of them after I get into the news. Just when we thought that we were getting out of the Libya conflict, the Pentagon decided that they were going to add 2 extra days to our airstrikes and our military involvement in Libya. 2 extra days may not seem like a lot of time. However, I feel that it is a big mistake. 2 days of airstrikes, considering that some of those tomahawks and some of the missiles that they're using can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and some of the missiles out of the planes cost literally tens of thousands of dollars. To give you an idea, the last time I knew, probably about 1994 or so, excuse me, 2004 or so, a training Sabo round for an M1 Abrams tank was running about $1,700, and that's a training round. So you can only imagine a live munition for a state of the art um, bomber or fighter aircraft can cost quite a lot of money. So I definitely think that adding 2 days can be a financial burden on top of the other 14 plus trillion dollars that we're already in debt. So it just goes to show that the government, specifically this administration, isn't going to slow down any of the spending anytime soon, which is obviously a giant mistake. Um, some of the other news that's going on that I find a little concerning that doesn't necessarily really involve the United States, but it definitely involves one of our allies, which would be France. Um, as much as a lot of Americans don't like the French, um, there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the Ivory Coast, and I think this can affect us in a certain way, seeing that we have a military presence in Libya right now. Um, in my opinion, I just feel that the whole Middle East and North Africa, Northeast Africa specifically, um, is really burning up right now. I really think this is a very disturbing trend. I really do, and I'll get into why here in a second um, as I push on to more news. It it's kind of crazy if you think about it. A Florida pastor burns a Quran, and it sparks deadly riots in Afghanistan. I think that tells you right there how volatile the situation is right now, especially with all that's going on in the Middle East and the United States having a gigantic military presence there. obviously in Afghanistan and Iraq, Libya, us sending a lot of our pilots to Israel for training, and vice versa, and our ties to Israel as a country, not only diplomatically but financially and militarily. It's proving to show that it's a very volatile situation, and I think that the president that we have now, being the way he decides things so slow or doesn't decide at all, is, in my honest opinion, going to stir up a lot of problems in that area, and I think that it could turn into something extremely large. I'm not predicting anything. I think to predict a war in the Middle East is like predicting that the sun is going to rise. That area of the world has been in constant turmoil basically since the beginning of man. If you take it from a religious aspect and you use a Christian ideal that man was created in the Garden of Eden, which a lot of people believe to be Mesopotamia, you can see that right off with the sin, and by the way, I'm not a Christian, but right off with the sin, there was already conflict in the Middle East, and that's what started, that whole constant tension and all that in the Middle East. Some people believe that. However, I'm a little bit more prone to believe that man migrated from specific areas on the earth inward. Obviously that would be more of an evolution idea. However, I'm not an evolutionist either. But I just think that it could lead to a lot of bad stuff. Really, all the other stuff in the news is the same old stuff that's been going on. Japan, some celebrity garbage, Charlie Sheen type stuff. I don't really get into stuff like that. I don't pay too much attention to celebrities. I think, for the most part, they're not worth even speaking about. I think right now the major things in the news would be obviously Libya and Japan. Japan, obviously a tragedy with the earthquake and the nuclear problem right now. But anyway, time's running down on this, so I'm going to get into the book. It is a fiction book, and I did state that I do not read a lot of fiction. However, I do have some. And it surprised me, any college student or former college student would know this book very well. It's commonly read in the academic world. But it surprised me of how few people have actually read it, just in everyday people, maybe people that haven't gone to college. I myself being one of them. But it's called Catch-22, and it's by Joseph Heller. And I believe its first print was somewhere around 1955. So obviously it was right after World War II, which is kind of the basis of the book. However, it's not your typical war book. It's actually a comedy, and it is probably the funniest story I have ever read or heard, movie or book. It's probably in my top 5 favorite books just because of how funny it actually is, and the brilliance of the writing, and just the storyline and the characters are all extremely good and extremely brilliant. So if any of you haven't read that, it would be an awesome book for you to pass the time. It's Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. Anyway, you guys have a good one, and I'll be back with you shortly.